Welcome to Meany Hall for the Performing Arts on the campus of the University of Washington and the 1996 University of Washington Freshman Convocation. The Convocation is a celebration in honor of freshmen and their families, welcoming them to the campus community. This marks the 13th ceremony since the tradition was revived in autumn 1984. It is not generally known that the university held convocations from the 1920s through the 1950s in the old Meany Hall. There are no records in the university archives indicating when or why the earlier convocations were discontinued. Until its revival in 1984, it was at least 20 years since one had been held. Speakers for today's event include University Marshal and Professor of Philosophy Ronald M. Moore, President Richard L. McCormick, Acting Provost Lee L. Huntsman, and the President of the Associated Students of the University, John H. Linder, Jr. The keynote speaker is Charles Johnson, Pollock Professor of English and winner of the 1990 National Book Award for the novel Middle Passage. The title of his convocation address is 4 Years of Adventure. Again, welcome to the 1996 University of Washington Freshman Convocation.
The 1996 University of Washington Freshman Convocation will be opened
for others,
with the singing of
you may
the
be the
Star
fourth
Spangled
generation of
Banner
Husky.
by Mr. Anthony Brown, accompanied by the University Wind Ensemble, conducted by Professor Timothy Saltzman of the School of Music. The audience will please rise and is invited to join with Mr. Brown in the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets rained glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the
Welcome to Meany Hall for the Performing Arts and to the 1996 University of Washington Freshman Convocation. I'm Ronald Moore, the University Marshal. In my regular job, I'm a professor in our philosophy department, but as University Marshal, I have two very important and ritual responsibilities which I exercise at convocation and commencement ceremonies. First, I lead the academic procession and make sure the president doesn't get lost. And second, as you will no doubt have noticed, I carry the mace. The mace is an ancient symbol of authority that reminds us that universities are custodians both of enduring traditions of learning and of the power they bestow on those who come to learn. It is also a reminder that the convocations of early universities, 600 or 700 years ago, were often far less restrained and civilized than ours has become. Intellectual debate between students and faculty members and between students and students sometimes escalated into physical confrontation, and the mace was used to restore order. I was told by my distinguished predecessor as University Marshal, Professor John Bridgman, that this ancient practice has enjoyed periodic modern revivals. When at Yale University commencement a few years ago, a rowdy student seized the microphone to make a political statement, the marshal actually picked up the mace and crowned him. I don't intend to follow that precedent. I've examined our mace. It's really a lovely work of art, handsomely adorned with images of the campus, and I wouldn't want to damage it. A convocation is a calling together. Today, we call together our incoming freshmen and their families to celebrate with you the beginning of a university education and to welcome you all to membership in our campus community. This is the 13th such ceremony since the tradition was revived in 1984 after a 20-year hiatus. We have found that it is both pleasant and important to begin the academic year with this gathering. It calls us members of the faculty and administration together to reaffirm in your presence the university's mission of educational service and to welcome the patrons we gladly serve. It calls you, students, together for the first time as an entering class. We hope you will find among those who are here today many who will be your close friends, and that the fellowship of learning that begins tomorrow will last a lifetime for all of you. And very importantly, it calls you, parents and friends, together to honor you for all you have done in bringing these fine young students to the threshold of a university education. You have provided the love, teaching, and encouragement that have made them ready to go on to learn with us. But in coming to us, they are not leaving you. Rather, we have called you all together today to affirm your presence in the University of Washington family. We hope you join with us in providing them caring support and encouragement, in challenging them to do their best, and in enjoying the excitement of their new discoveries and skills. About the time this university was founded, a century and a half ago, Matthew Arnold addressed a gathering much like this one and identified as the enduring purpose of the university that it presented learning, the best that has been thought and said in the world. It was, he said, by doing so that the university could help to bind together the generations through their sharing in a common intellectual estate. It is our ambition to sustain that very goal, and we welcome you all to the intellectual estate that will grow from it. Let me now begin today's ceremony by introducing Dr. Richard L. McCormick, President of the University of Washington, who will preside. Dr. McCormick.
Thank you, Marshal Moore. First, let me express a warm welcome to the students, parents, grandparents, friends, and families of the entering class of 1996 at the University of Washington, and the first class in history that will graduate in the 21st century. Welcome and congratulations and we trust that you all will make it within the 21st century. Today, the first-year students will begin a remarkable personal journey, 4 years of adventure, as our distinguished convocation speaker, Professor Charles Johnson, has called it, a journey that we hope will change your lives and prepare you for all that will follow. Each of you has been selected from among many more qualified applicants than could possibly have been accepted at the University of Washington. So you are extremely well prepared for your work at our university, and we are very proud to have you here. The freshman class of 1996 is one of the largest in the history of the University of Washington. There are, in fact, over 4,000 of you, half women and half men, 90% from the state of Washington and the rest from around the nation and around the world. During the next 4 years, you'll learn and grow together. You'll learn from each other as well as from the faculty, and when you graduate from the UW, you'll have an outstanding education and you'll have friends for a lifetime. We mark today with a formal ceremony because besides the beginning of a personal journey for each of you, you are also entering into an institution that is very old, very distinguished, and of which we and you are very proud. Let me say a few words about the institution you're joining today. The origins of the University of Washington date back to 1861, well before Washington was a state and well before there were even very many students capable of benefiting from a college education. Our university's age and traditions are symbolized today by the academic regalia worn by those of us on this platform. In establishing the University of Washington so many years ago, our founders here in Seattle were carrying forward a tradition of university learning dating back to the 17th century in America and to the 12th century in Europe. The founders knew that a university was a place of learning where the old teach the young, and the young repay the debt by transcending the inherited wisdom and teaching another group of young ones. This is an ideal, of course, but it's an ideal that is essential to human happiness and more real within a university like ours than anywhere else on earth. In time, our university, like others, assumed new responsibilities besides learning, including research, that is discovering new knowledge, and service, that is applying our knowledge beyond the campus to the world at large. And I hope that besides your learning, each of you in the class of 1996 will also participate in our university's missions of research and service. That means getting involved, getting to know your professors, getting involved in the community at large. You'll never again in all your life have such freedom to explore learning and to engage in original research and to apply your knowledge to our community. The 4 years that lie ahead of you are about much more than getting trained for a job. I acknowledge they're that, but there's much more involved. For in today's fast-paced, technologically changing world, you'll probably need to get trained for your job again and again. The 4 years that lie ahead are also about preparing you for the rest of your lives, for citizenship and community membership and making your families and advancing our civilization. You won't learn how to do these things if you just concentrate on career preparation. And this brings me back to you and to your entrance into the ranks of men and women across the decades and across 2 centuries who have received their educations here at the University of Washington. You are not yet the most learned members of our university community. That may come in time, but you have the freshest eyes and the keenest enthusiasm. Your job, one among your many, is to use those fresh eyes to spot ways in which we at the University of Washington can live out our ideals more fully, and to tell us so. In this sense, to say that we are pleased to welcome you to the freshman class of 1996 and the graduating class of 2000 is completely true, but it is also a vast understatement. Your arrival here today marks the annual renewal of our university's commitment to the ideal I cited before, and to learning and research and service in a proud tradition that goes back in time and looks forward in time. Without that renewal, born here today by you, we would die as an institution and as a civilization. We don't intend to let that happen, and neither do you. So it is with much more than the usual amount of emotion and pride that I say to each of you, welcome to the University of Washington. It is now my pleasure to introduce the other members of the platform party before you this afternoon. First, I want to mention the regents of the University of Washington. The regents are men and women appointed by the governor and confirmed by the Senate, each of whom is distinguished for significant accomplishments in their own lives, and each of whom brings to our university and to public life generally a deep commitment to education and to providing the guidance this university needs. So let me introduce the regents of the University of Washington. Daniel J. Evans, President of the Board of Regents. Ann E. Daly, Vice President of the Board of Regents. Mari J. Clack, Jerome Farris, Shelley Yap, and Cindy Zender, the regents of the University of Washington. Representing our faculty on this platform is Dr. Joan C. Martin, Chair of the Faculty Senate. And the Vice Presidents of the University of Washington permit me to introduce them all. First, the Provost, Dr. Lee L. Huntsman. Next, the Vice President for Minority Affairs, Dr. Myron Appilato. The Vice President for Development, Marilyn Dunn. The Vice President for University Relations, Robert G. Eady. And the Vice President for Student Affairs, Ernest Morris, the Vice Presidents of the University of Washington. Other administrative representatives include Cheryl Berkey, Associate Vice President for University Relations and Director of Government Relations, Christine Hughes, Division Chief, Attorney General's Office, and Carol Nichols, Executive Assistant to the President. I turn now to the deans, who are the chief academic officers of the colleges and schools that make up the University of Washington. I'd like them all to stand before they are recognized together, and I will be introducing them in chronological order of the college or school's founding, beginning with Dean John B. Simpson of the College of Arts and Sciences, Dean Alan D. Glenn of the College of Education, Dean Sidney D. Nelson of the School of Pharmacy, Dean Roland L. Yorth of the School of Law, Dean David B. Thorud of the College of Forest Resources, Associate Dean Philip P. Keenast, School of Business Administration, Professor Helen N. Kogan, School of Nursing, Associate Dean D. Daniel Hunt, School of Medicine, Dean Jerry V. Finrow, College of Architecture and Urban Planning, Dean Nancy R. Hoyman, School of Social Work, Dean Margaret R. Gordon, the Graduate School of Public Affairs, Dean Arthur R. M. Knoll, the College of Fishery and Ocean Sciences, Dean Frederick L. Campbell, Undergraduate Education, the Deans of the University of Washington. Other administrative representatives include Betty Bengston, Director of University Libraries, Let me turn now to some other individuals, a couple of whom will be introduced more fully later. Our Convocation's keynote speaker is Professor Charles Johnson, Pollock Professor of English. Representing the student government are two individuals, Mr. John H. Linder, Jr., President of the Associated Students of the University of Washington, and Ms. Nan M. Hussey, President of the Graduate and Professional Students Senate. Among the faculty members seated on the platform are two distinguished teaching awardees, men who represent our faculty's deep commitment to excellence in learning. They are Dr. George S. Bridges, Professor of Sociology, and Dr. James Klaus, Professor of Classics. Now let me introduce to you three outstanding students who represent excellence in learning and education, and who above all of their peers have done extraordinarily well in their academic work at the University of Washington. Three faculty medalists. First, Mr. Benjulian A. Palanka, Mr. Peter R. Matson, and Ms. Yevgenia Segal, faculty medalists. Representing the Alumni Association, the tens and thousands of men and women across our state and across our nation who have completed their education at the university and whose loyalty to it knows no bounds, the president of the Alumni Association, Dr. Lawrence Matsuda. And now let me introduce the many marshals who make this ceremony possible. The University Marshal, whom you have already met, Dr. Ronald M. Moore, Associate Professor of Philosophy. The President's Party Marshal, Dr. Norm Arkins, Associate Vice President and Executive Director for University Relations and Special Assistant to the President. Gosh, that's a lot of titles, Norm. The Dean's Party Marshal, Dr. Loveday Conquest, Associate Dean, College of Ocean and Fisheries Sciences. The Chief Convocation Marshal, Dr. Steve Olswang, Vice Provost. And the Convocation Marshals, including Mr. Frank M. Birdwell, Assistant Registrar, Office of the Registrar, Dr. Piri Hart, Systems Administrator, Medicine, Allergy, and Infectious Diseases, Dr. Sandra Madrid, Assistant Dean of the School of Law, Dr. Mary M. Alona, Director of the Student Counseling Center, Dr. Millie L. Russell, Assistant to the Vice President for Minority Affairs, and Dr. Ronald C. Smith, Program Manager for Housing Services, the marshals of this year's Freshman Convocation. I now have the pleasure of introducing again the President of the Associated Students of the University of Washington, Mr. John Linder, representing the long tradition of student governance at our university, the concept that our university moves forward when students and faculty and administrators do it together. John was elected by his peers, the students all across the university, to lead them in the year ahead. I look forward to working with him. Here he is, John Linder, President of the ASUW.
Good morning, or good afternoon. I actually wanted this speech is close to my heart. My sister's a freshman at the other university in this state, so it speaks to her heart, and hopefully it'll speak to yours as well. Ladies and gentlemen, honored guests, Dr. McCormick, my friends, my family, let me extend to you a warm and hearty welcome. Now, how many of you got lost while on campus today? Raise your hands. Come on, there's got to be a few. Okay, trust me, I can identify. I think I was lost for about the first 2 months of my freshman year. Now, being lost is more than just the physical ailment of not knowing where you are. It's also a good metaphor for what it's like at the start of your time here at this university. You move from a well-known and secure past to a present and a future with many variables and many unknowns. So I'm going to talk about three themes: yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Yesterday. Yesterday makes us who we are, and it refers to the past, so we'll start there. Now, all of us have traveled long roads to get here today. For some of you, you may be the first generation to go off to college, while for others, you may be the fourth generation of Husky. Now, your paths have brought you through adversity and hardship, through growth and good times, and they've deposited you here at the University of Washington. So no matter which path you've taken, and no matter where your path has taken you, welcome. Today. Today is the first step of a new journey on a new path. This path will take you through the heights of joy and the depths of despair. Today you start a long journey, one that will tax your soul and your understanding of yourself. And today, we'll take this first step together. Now, there are three things you can take on this journey. Rather, there are three lessons you need. William Borden, who's a missionary, once summed them up this way. He said, no reserves, no retreats, and no regrets. On your journey, you must give all of yourself to everything you do. Don't ever hold back. No reserves. You should never compromise yourself, yet always be willing to grow. No retreats. And if you give of yourself freely and never compromise who it is you are, then no matter where your path takes you, you will have no regrets. Now, this journey we call college is about being a better citizen, and this university should help you achieve this. Now, for me, being a better citizen is more than just getting a good job and paying taxes. It's more than voting and absorbing the news. It's about being a critical thinker and understanding differences and similarities. It's about being active and participating. And it's about working and accepting with our differences. And it's about serving our fellow citizens. Tomorrow you'll have choices. Do I get up and go to class? Do I call mom and dad? Do I take the internship with Senator Murray? Do I mentor a young mind at a nearby elementary school? Do I go to that party? Will I eat at McMahon Food Service? More importantly, will I live after eating at McMahon Food Service? Who should I hang out with? Who should I date? Is education more than just classwork? And do I go on that Slurpee run at midnight? Now, you can choose to be alone for these decisions, but you don't have to be alone. And I warn you that if you choose to go it alone, your journey will almost be impossible. So the question is, how do I keep from being isolated? The answer is to build a community. Now, I challenge you to join me and the rest of the ASUW, which is your student government. We have a place for you. And that with your help, we can build a community that breaks through walls and cuts across divisions. These divisions separate the Greek from the commuter, the graduate from the undergraduate, the male from the female, the gay from the straight, the black from the white, the student from the administrator, and the student from the alum. We must endeavor to build a community at this university that cuts across all of these boundaries. The community should be based on 5 central themes: education, understanding, acceptance, participation, and service. Now, we must endeavor to educate ourselves, to understand that we have differences, but at the same time to accept them. We must be active politically and socially, and serve our neighbors and our friends. Now, how do we go about building this community? We cannot build a community out of straw, sticks, or even brick. And we cannot build a community out of misunderstandings, prejudices, or isolation. We can build a community out of hard work and support, understanding and education, and interactions through service. Now, this community, if built by working together and interacting with one another, will be able to sustain us on our long journey together. Now, imagine yourself 4 or 5 years from now, hopefully, you've reached the end of your collegiate journey. And no matter where your path has taken you, and the UW community that we have built has sustained you through the good times and the bad times, through the expected and the unexpected. It has sustained you through the spring break trips to Disneyland, which nonstop is only a 19.5-hour drive. I, however, do not recommend you drive straight through, because after that length of time, 5 bodies tend to develop a funny odor. The community was there when your best friend asked you to be his best man. The community was also there when a friend approached you and told you they'd been sexually assaulted. Believe me, it does happen. The community was there when it felt as though you'd been stabbed in the back by a trusted friend. Now, the UW community and friendship has enabled me to continue on my path. It has supported me and guided me throughout my 4 years here at this university, and I encourage you to use it to help yourself as well. Now, it appears as though our journey will be at an end as our years of college draw to a close, but it is not an end. It is simply another beginning. Time will wash away your grades. They'll mean little after school. Time will wash away all the physical monuments we construct to ourselves. It will even wash away the pain we have endured. But time is a strange companion that will leave us with our memories, our experiences, and our relationships intact. And our community will continue beyond the walls of this institution, and our community that we have set out to build today will carry us throughout our life. Now, today we start our journey as Huskies, and the community we build will extend beyond the walls of this institution, and it will extend beyond our time at this institution. Would the recently elected student government, the ASUW Board of Control, please stand? You guys, come on, stand up. And anyone else? Okay. These, my friends, are the people that run your student government. There's a few more of them. I think they're too shy to stand up. And we want your assistance to build a community. I ask you to help us build a community that breaks down barriers between students and cuts across all these divisions that we have. This community must also extend beyond the university's walls into Seattle and the state. And this community must extend beyond our time here at this university. Now, the community we set out to create will help us to be better citizens, citizens who shape their lives and their environment. Citizens aren't just occupants of their environment, they're architects. Now, we must remember that our journey through life allows us to carry but 3 things: Our total dedication, no reserves. Our accepting and definite self, no retreats. And our mixture of memories, both pleasant and miserable, no regrets. So to close, I'd like to once again welcome you to the University of Washington. Thank you, and good afternoon.
Thank you, John. That was an outstanding set of remarks. I now have the pleasure of introducing the Provost of the University of Washington, Dr. Lee Huntsman. Some of you may wonder what a provost is. If you look it up in the Oxford English Dictionary, you'll see that among other meanings, the provost is the keeper of the keys. At the University of Washington, the provost is also the chief academic officer and the chief budget officer. It is he to whom the deans of the schools and colleges report. Our provost, Dr. Lee Huntsman, will introduce this afternoon's speaker. Provost Huntsman.
Good afternoon. It is indeed my pleasure to introduce to you our speaker this afternoon, Professor Charles Johnson. He grew up in Illinois, graduated from high school in Evanston, and made that transition that so many of you are making today as he went off to Southern Illinois University. There he studied and received both a BA and then an MA. But his life course and his interest was established much earlier when, as a child, he discovered a fascination for things of the imagination. He became deeply involved with reading and expressing his own creativity, initially through drawing. By the time he was in high school, he was remarkably successful as a cartoonist and had over 1,000 cartoons published, and indeed had some of his stories published as well. He subsequently, after college, did graduate study at the State University of New York at Stony Brook. And when he was finished there, he was recruited here to join our faculty of English. And he arrived here exactly 20 years ago. Over the years, his imagination has expressed itself in a remarkably versatile set of ways. He has written children's works, television scripts, articles, short stories, literary reviews, books, and cartoons. In fact, he continues to do cartooning. The outpouring of his creativity has resulted in many, many awards over the years. I would like to mention just a small selection. He's received the Callaloo Creative Writing Award. He's received the award for the Best Film in Social Studies category from the National Educational Film Festival. He's received an International Youth Prize for his literature. Most notably, perhaps, he received the National Book Award in 1990 for his novel Middle Passage. In addition to the awards for his work, Professor Johnson has received many personal awards. His alma mater, Southern Illinois University, has bestowed upon him the Alumni Achievement Award. Notably, he has had in his honor a declaration of Charles Johnson Day in King County, in the state of Washington, and something that seems rather puzzling, in the city of Baltimore. I encourage you to speak with him at the social time following the convocation and try to understand the history of that honor. Here at the University of Washington, we have bestowed upon him one of our greatest honors, that of an endowed chair. He is the Pollock Professor for Excellence in English. Like so many people around this great institution, Charles Johnson is a multifaceted individual. He is certainly a scholar, a teacher, an original thinker, and a really interesting person. He is, for example, a longtime expert in martial arts and helps to run a school in Kung Fu here. He is apparently also something of an adventurer, as judging by the title of his talk to us this afternoon, 4 Years of Adventure. Please join me in welcoming Professor Charles Johnson.
Thank you, and welcome to the University of Washington. First, I would like to congratulate those of you who begin this week as freshmen, and I would like to also congratulate your families, your counselors, and your mentors for helping you to begin what we hope will be 4 years of adventure. The very fact that you are in this audience means that you have distinguished yourselves already. Only 25% of this country's population goes to college. As a class, you have a grade point average of 3.6. Your average SAT score is 567 for the verbal exam and 581 for math. Tomorrow, on Monday, you will become part of an institution that is 135 years old and the size of a small city, a school that has over $1 billion operating budget each year and 20,000 faculty and staff, a school that receives more federal research funds than any other public university in this country. 11 graduate departments at this university are rated in the top 10 in their field in the nation. On an average day, 27,000 vehicles travel across UW's 703 acres. You probably saw some of them today. At first glance, a university this size can seem overwhelming to faculty as well as students. And sometimes one wonders if so many departments and so many courses and so many people have a common purpose. As one teacher put it in a now famous definition, the university is a collection of departments held together by a heating system. When I graduated from college many years ago, I had a friend who probably agreed with this definition. The day after we graduated, after we'd taken back our caps and our gowns, he made an appointment to see our college president. And he brought along his grade transcript for 4 years with him. Sitting in the president's office, he spread the transcript out on his desk and he said, "You made me take all these classes. What I want to know is, how do they all fit together?" Our school president at the time looked over his grade transcript. He thought for a moment, and at last he said, "I don't know." Before my address is over today, I'd like to give you one possible answer to that question. How do these 4 years fit together? This fall begins my 20th year of teaching at UW. Some of you probably weren't born when I arrived on this campus in 1976 as a 28-year-old assistant professor. Over the last 2 wonderful decades, I've worked with thousands of students. Most of them were aspiring writers. And I'm pleased to say that some of them have gone on to become best-selling authors, like young David Guterson, who lives on Bainbridge Island, whose first novel, Snow Falling on Cedars, won the 1995 PIN-Faulkner Award for Fiction and has now over 1 million copies in print. My former students have spread out to all 4 corners of the earth. They are editors now and teachers, published novels, poets, screenwriters, and short story writers. One whose name is Catherine Phelps is one of the leading writers on computer technology in Australia. And of course, some of my students became bankers and partners in mid-sized law firms, but they are bankers and lawyers who still write fiction and have an insatiable love for literature and the arts. One of them just wrote me, actually, after 10 years, because he wants me to look at his new novel, right? Having worked with these very successful students, I can say that some of them knew from the very moment that they set foot on this campus what their talents were, and they knew what they wanted to be. But the vast majority of my students over the years were not so prescient, and neither was I at 18 when I left home for the first time to go away to a large state school in Illinois, Southern Illinois University, a school much like UW in its size and in what it offered. Like many of you, I was the first person in the history of my family to go to college. My earning a degree was the dream of my mother, who only went as far as high school, and of my father, who went only as far as the 5th grade. My parents, like yours, were my first and my most important teachers. An Italian friend I had in college once told me that when he went off to college, his mother said to him, "Don't get too smart and don't forget about your family." Her words, I think, were full of wisdom and could well be a motto for all of us in higher education today. In 1966, I went off to college, I guess, as eager for education and as idealistic and naive as any young man could be. But like my Italian friend, I was very conscious of the fact that my parents and all my relatives were counting on me to fulfill the dreams they had been denied. The summer before my freshman year, Martin Luther King brought his campaign against discrimination to Chicago, where my family lived in Evanston, a nearby suburb. I was acutely aware that thousands of civil rights workers had risked their lives and some had given their lives so that I would have the simple opportunity to study and to grow and maybe one day repay others for the great sacrifices they made to realize a more integrated and just society. In those days, in the 60s, this country was in turmoil, it was changing, and the ground beneath our feet felt as if it was constantly shifting. And college campuses were changing too. Back then, it was impossible for a student not to be interested in politics. But my greatest concern at age 18 was answering the question, what am I going to be? My dream when I was a teenager was to be an artist. Drawing was the only passion that I knew since childhood. In high school, when I was 17, I published my first drawings and stories, and I worked on the school newspaper. So it seemed logical to me at the time that in college I should pursue the vocation of journalism. I thought newspaper work would allow me to continue publishing my writing and my drawing. I anticipated that perhaps after 4 years, I might work on a newspaper like the Chicago Tribune, which would have made my mother very happy. Her son's byline in the hometown paper a couple of times a week, she would have loved that. So within a few days of unpacking in my dormitory room, I found my way to the college newspaper. I showed them my samples from high school, and I got hired drawing cartoons. A little bit later, I talked my way onto the town newspaper and got regular work as a political cartoonist. On campus, I later taught a drawing class in what was then called the free school, where anyone could teach whatever they wanted, for free, of course. And for the campus TV station, I had the chance to create a television series on how to draw, which went nationwide on PBS the next year. Now, don't forget, these were the 60s. New programs were being created, like Black Studies, and because there were so few Black Studies teachers, I found myself recruited to be one of 30 undergraduate discussion group leaders for a big survey course on Black history. College, as it turned out for me, fed my creativity and supported my early passion to draw. But I would do wrong, and I would be lying to you, if I said that all the students I went to school with felt as I did. Many of the friends I made my freshman year said with no hesitation at all that what they wanted to do was, quote, get that piece of paper, end quote, and get out in the world, out of school as quick as they could. I think I understood at the time their feelings, although I didn't feel that way. Then, as now, a college degree translates into greater earning power in the marketplace. And as a matter of fact, I recently read that for every year of college education you complete, you raise your future salary or wages by 10%. The premium for a college education is at its highest level in more than 50 years. Now, I think this is good news because we all want to make money. But I think the freshmen I knew who only saw a degree in financial terms and who failed to open themselves to the university's dazzling array of opportunities cheated themselves, and today many of them regret that. It was as if they were wearing blinders that shielded out anything that might distract them from the dogged pursuit of their diploma and finding a high-paying job after graduation. What most people don't know is that after getting a degree, the average student reads only one book a year. And most likely that book is a bestseller his or her friends and coworkers are reading, and he's too embarrassed to admit that he hasn't read it too. Sadly, today, some of my old college friends fall into that category. However, other freshmen I met took full advantage of the new resources at their disposal. One of my fellow students in journalism was a man from Ghana who had one of the most poetic names I think I have ever heard, Fortunata Massa. And I remember Fortunata saying to me something I've never forgotten. He said, "Do you know what I like most about America? No matter what you want to learn, there is someone here who can teach it to you." In a sense, I think Fortunata Massa understood the spirit of serendipity at American universities better than some of my born and raised American friends. He was eager to learn everything from journalism to automobile repair, from economics to guitar playing, from karate to physics. Like Henry David Thoreau, Fortunato wanted to, quote, have as many trades as fingers on the hand, end quote. And he discovered, as I discovered, a source of enrichment seldom described in your college handbook. What I'm talking about are other students, the people you're sitting beside in this room today. I found, as I hope you will find, that the other students with whom you share classrooms and dormitories represent an incredible degree of difference and diversity. My classmates in college were not only from the Midwest, they came from the East Coast, from Africa, like Fortunato Massa, and from China, from Chicago's inner city and from little rural towns in Illinois with names like Flat Rock and Granite City. They came with backgrounds and cultural differences quite different from my own. As a matter of fact, a few older students I came to know came to college from prison. Needless to say, each and every one of these students enlarged my perspective on life. I believe your fellow students, if you let them, will do the same for you. Your other source of serendipity is, of course, the faculty. I said I started out as a journalism major. As such, I found myself required to take a course in, of all things, philosophy. At 18, I knew nothing, zip, zero, nada, about philosophy. I let my advisor talk me into taking a huge lecture course taught by a professor named John Howey. It was on the philosophy of the pre-Socratics. Somehow, and I don't know how, and with some gift he had, I don't know what, Dr. Howey was able to sing the 2,000-year-old ethical problems Democritus and Epicurus wrestled with in such a way that I realized for the first time that many of the political issues I was publishing cartoons about in the late 1960s were issues debated and discussed with consummate sophistication 2,000 years before the birth of the American Republic. He made me see that the questions we ask determine the quality of the answers we get. Sitting in a sea of students in Dr. Howey's class, I realized I simply had to pursue philosophy for the rest of my life if I wanted to understand my work as a journalist better. And so thanks to Dr. Howey, who is today one of my friends and colleagues, I discovered a new passion I didn't realize I possessed until I went to college. Now, Dr. Howey was a quiet man. In fact, he was a minister. But directly across the street from his office in the Department of Philosophy was the Department of English. And in one of those tiny offices, there was a young professor named John Gardner, who was a novelist, a medievalist, and a critic. He was destined to become the most influential writing teacher of our time. I came to know John after I graduated with a degree in journalism and was by then a graduate student in philosophy while I worked part-time as a reporter for one of the local newspapers. I signed up for his class in novel writing because I'd heard so much about him, and because after writing and publishing journalism for several years, I had the urge to explore what I might accomplish as a writer in a longer form, like the novel. To shorten a long story, Gardner, who taught thousands of students across America, guided me sentence by sentence when I was 24 years old through the composition of my first published novel. He also provided me with a portrait of what an artist and scholar could be. Gardner knew 12 languages, ancient and modern. He was a Chaucer scholar, and if any of you take a class on the Old English epic Beowulf, it's possible that your teacher will also ask you to read Gardner's novel, Grendel, which retells the story of Beowulf's battle with the monster Grendel from the monster's point of view. It's a bit like Beowulf meets Walt Disney. John Gardner so loved the poet Homer that at age 45, he taught himself Greek in order to do his own translation of the Iliad for his students, whose work, by the way, Gardner published at his own expense in a magazine he started in the 1950s. He translated Japanese authors whose works he admired and published over 30 of his own books, novels, short stories, poetry. He wrote librettos, screenplays, book reviews, everything possible in the English language, and on top of all that, he played the French horn. He also believed deeply in an artist and scholar's duty, first and foremost, to teach what he or she has learned and to prepare the next generation to pick up the torch of creating and educating. The word education has Latin roots. If you look it up, you'll discover that education comes from the Latin word educare, which means, quote, to lead out or to draw out. In other words, education is not simply about pouring information into the head of passive students. No, it is about drawing out each student's individual potential so that they, the students, can continue to learn and grow long after they have left their professors, and even to contradict their professors in the name of truth if that becomes necessary. This was the kind of teacher John Gardner was. He believed the university provided each of us with a rare opportunity to, in the words of Aristotle, actualize our potential. I can assure you that it wasn't until I went to college that I realized how the arts and sciences are interconnected and interdisciplinary at their very foundation. I discovered that the love of art inevitably led to a curiosity about the history of ideas, and that the history of ideas led to a critical interest in culture, which in turn demanded the study of other cultures as well. My teachers like Howie and Gardner helped me to discover that the seed of a single passion, well pursued, can flower into a lifelong commitment to creativity and the quest for knowledge. As freshmen, you will find educators like these at the University of Washington. This is the campus, this is the home of poet Theodore Roethke and of artist Jacob Lawrence. Today, the UW has 4 recipients of the Nobel Prize, 36 professors with awards from the National Academy of Sciences, 10 teachers honored by the National Academy of Engineering, 38 by the National Institute of Medicine, 24 who are members of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. We have 6 MacArthur Fellows. One is the wife of President McCormick. 3 National Medal of Science winners, 42 winners of Guggenheim Fellowships, and 1 National Book Award winner. Thank you. During the next 4 years, it will be to your advantage to regard all of your professors and classes as a resource, as doorways into worlds of knowledge and experience. Some of those yet unopened doors may deliver you to careers and achievements you cannot dream of this afternoon. But let me give you one warning so that 4 years from now you don't carry your grade transcript over to President McCormick and ask him, how does all this fit together? The warning is this: you cannot hold the university responsible for your intellectual life. The only person ultimately responsible for the diversity of your skills and the depth of your knowledge is you. You must bring the curiosity. You must bring the passion to, as the Greeks once put it, know thyself. The only thing your teachers can provide is a strong yet flexible foundation for learning, one that we expect you will build upon for the remainder of your days on this earth. I think educator Mortimer Adler sums this up very well when he says, what is the real meaning of learning? What is the ultimate goal toward which every part of schooling or education is directed? I think you all know the word that describes it. It is wisdom. We would all like to be a little wiser than we are, to have a little more understanding, a little more insight, a little more comprehension of the human situation, of the conditions of our lives, of the world in which we live, to know better the difference between good and evil, But how long does it take to become wise? The answer is a lifetime. Certainly we all know that we cannot become wise in youth. Nothing would be more preposterous than the supposition that a boy or girl graduating from college could be wise. Nor can you ever know, nor can you ever have enough wisdom or too much. No matter how wise we become little by little in the course of a lifetime, we are always less than perfectly wise, nor are we ever as wise as we can be. Hence, if wisdom is the ultimate goal of the whole process of learning, then that process must go on for a lifetime. For any of us to attain even the little wisdom we can acquire in the course of a lifetime, there is no stopping short. We can never become wise enough to say, now I can stop learning or thinking. Wisdom is hard to come by and is slowly won. In closing, let me make one final remark. I've spoken briefly about the transformative impact the university may have on you. What is equally important is the impact each of you will have on the University of Washington while you are here and after you leave. UW is a 135-year-old institution, but it is not finished. Like you, like me, this school is in a constant process of change and evolution. If your teachers are to realize their full potential, they need you and the best that you can give. What Martin Luther King Jr. once said about all Americans is equally true for the relationship between you and the professors you will meet this week. Dr. King said, strangely enough, I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. You can never be what you ought to be until I am what I ought to be. This, I think, is the adventure of the university. All together, each of us possessing what the other needs, we form, as teachers and students, a community which moves forward toward enlightenment and completion. Thank you, and have a terrific first year.
Professor Johnson, what an astonishing speech, what an astonishing beginning to the 1996 academic year. You observed that our university was 135 years old and not yet finished. What a wonderful observation for this institution and for each of us. Just by coming here, just by arriving, you, the members of the freshman class of 1996, have already made it a better university. May we work together to make it better still by the time you graduate at the beginning of the 21st century. Now, as this convocation draws to a close, I want to acknowledge with enormous respect and great appreciation the wind ensemble, which is beneath us. You mostly can't see them, but you have heard them as the ceremony has gone forward. So let me take this occasion to introduce Professor Timothy Salzman and the University Wind Ensemble. Thank you very much. This has been a glorious convocation, exactly the kind of ceremony that we want, exactly the kind of statements that we want you to hear about our university, which is now your university. I have the pleasure of reintroducing University Marshal Moore, who will close today's ceremony.
As this ceremony concludes, may I remind you that the campus offers many attractive locations for picture taking, Many visitors enjoy using the traditional university columns in the Sylvan Theater and the Drumheller Memorial Fountain as a background for photographs. The Sylvan Theater and the Drumheller Memorial Fountain are readily reached just southeast of Meany Hall. Parents, students, and other guests are invited to meet members of the faculty, administration, and Board of Regents at the east and west side lobbies of the Meany Hall for complimentary refreshments provided by the University Alumni Association. The audience is requested to remain seated until the completion of the recession by the platform party. The 1996 Freshman Convocation of the University of Washington is closed.